This is the tale of ancient Egypt's most famous daughter, and its last active pharaoh, a woman immortalized in poems, on canvas, and in movies. An enigmatic heroine to whom William Shakespeare devoted one of his greatest tragedies. Her story is one that has been retold throughout history, full of romance and love, riches and betrayal. But beneath the gold and glamour lies a far darker tale of sibling rivalry taken to the extreme and a thirst for power that would change the course of history. Born in 69 BCE in Alexandria, Cleopatra was the third of a possible 6 children, all of whom shared a common father, Ptolemy XII. The Ptolemaic dynasty, a Macedonian Greek royal family that had ties to Alexander the Great, had ruled Egypt since 305 BC. Traditionally, male rulers took the name Ptolemy, while Ptolemaic queens were usually named Cleopatra, Arsinoe, or Berenice. Before we go further with Cleopatra, it is important that you understand the connection between Alexander the Great, Ptolemy, and Cleopatra. In 332 BC, Alexander the Great of Macedon conquered Egypt, and after his demise, his vast territories were divided among his generals. Ptolemy assumed control as the Macedonian ruler of Egypt. Under Ptolemy I's leadership, an eastern Mediterranean empire flourished, extending from North Africa to Syria. Establishing Alexandria in Egypt as the opulent capital, Ptolemy I transformed it into the wealthiest city in the Mediterranean. The Macedonians brought Greek language and culture into Ptolemy I's realm, making Alexandria the epicenter of Greek civilization, with a renowned library claiming to house the world's knowledge. Despite their Greek roots, the Ptolemies governed Egypt for almost 3 centuries, imposing taxes on the native populace, whose wealth relied on Nile River Valley farming. In 197 BC, a neighboring king seized a significant portion of the empire after defeating the army of Ptolemy V. Ptolemy V sought peace by marrying Cleopatra, the daughter of the conquering king, marking the inception of a line of Cleopatra queens. The Ptolemies engaged in constant internal strife for the Egyptian throne, marked by family betrayals and assassinations, often through poison. Ptolemy XII, who commenced his lengthy reign in 80 BC, aligned with Rome as a client king to retain authority over Egypt. He was also the father of the most famous Cleopatra. Cleopatra's initial foray into authority occurred at the age of 14, serving as co-ruler alongside her father, Ptolemy XII, after his reinstatement to the throne following a 3-year exile, albeit with restricted powers. Ptolemy XII's return to the throne had cost Cleopatra's elder sister, Berenice, her life. Consequently, 18-year-old Cleopatra assumed the role of co-ruler with her 10-year-old brother, Ptolemy XIII, upon her father's demise in March of 51 BC. In adherence to Pharaonic tradition, emphasizing the preservation of the royal bloodline's purity, Cleopatra married her younger brother and co-ruler. However, it swiftly became apparent that she harbored no intentions of sharing authority. Within months, Ptolemy XIII's name vanished from official records, and Cleopatra's face stood alone on currency. Julius Caesar, being approximately 3 decades senior to Cleopatra, unintentionally found himself in Egypt due to his ongoing civil war against Roman General Pompey. Following a string of defeats, Pompey sought refuge in Egypt in 48 BC, aiming to garner support from Ptolemy XIII. However, the young pharaoh deemed Pompey more of a liability than an asset and ordered his execution. When Caesar landed with a small body of troops in Alexandria, he was presented with Pompey's head. For reasons obscured by time, Caesar opted to prolong his stay in Egypt, addressing the conflict between Ptolemy XIII and Cleopatra. The potential link to Rome's dependence on Egypt for grain might have motivated Caesar's stay in Egypt. Ptolemy XIII tried to convince Caesar to acknowledge him as sole ruler of Egypt and barred Cleopatra from seeing him. Ptolemy XIII went to bed content, thinking his sister, trapped at Pelusium, couldn't plead her case before Caesar. The next morning, to his dismay, she had arrived at the palace, already in an intimate relationship with Caesar, who supported her cause. Overwhelmed, Ptolemy XIII stormed from the palace, tearing off his diadem, inciting a public display of anger. Despite the crowd's intent to mob the palace, Caesar stood firm, reading Ptolemy XII's will at a formal assembly, emphasizing joint rule for the brother and sister. Caesar's intervention restored Cleopatra to power, and their intimacy led to the birth of Caesarion. Ptolemy XIII died in a failed rebellion in 47 BC, and was replaced as co-ruler by his and Cleopatra's younger brother, Ptolemy XIV, who Cleopatra would eventually have killed. With a son by her side, Cleopatra abandoned any thought of assuming the role of a female king. Instead, she cultivated a potent new identity as the semi-divine mother, instantly recognizable to both Egyptian and Greek subjects. Towards the end of her father's reign, Cleopatra had already attained a divine status. Now she became specifically associated with Egypt's renowned single mother, the goddess Isis. Following Julius Caesar's assassination in 44 BC on the Ides of March, Cleopatra faced a delicate situation. Present in Rome during the event, she swiftly returned to Egypt as a civil war erupted between Antony and Octavian against those responsible for Caesar's death. After their triumph, Octavian governed the Western Roman Republic, while Antony held sway in the East. By 41 BC, with Antony in control of the East, he summoned Cleopatra to Asia Minor, which is modern-day Turkey, to inquire about her lack of support for his troops during the conflict with Caesar's assassins. Antony, enthralled by her intellect and beauty, fell deeply in love with her. His former keen interest in various matters waned, and Cleopatra's commands were executed without regard for societal or natural laws. Antony and Cleopatra established a strong connection, bearing 3 children together. In 40 BC, they welcomed twins, Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene, and in 36 BC, their third child, Ptolemy Philadelphus, was born. Antony, showing political favoritism, directed King Herod of Judea to cede territories to Cleopatra. During the Roman-Parthian conflict from approximately 40 BC to 36 BC, Antony commanded Roman forces in the Middle East, supported by Cleopatra's shipments of supplies. Despite fathering children with Cleopatra, Antony remained legally wed to Octavia, sister of Octavian. In 35 BC, Octavia, living separately from Antony, visited Alexandria, but Antony insisted she return to Rome. Octavian, displeased with Antony's treatment of Octavia, honored her publicly, highlighting Antony's actions and creating discomfort for him in Rome. Tensions escalated between Antony and Octavian, leading to an official war in 32 BC, with Octavian attributing much of the blame, whether justly or unjustly, to Cleopatra. In Rome, a vote granted pardon and praise to Antony's supporters if they abandoned him, while declaring war specifically on Cleopatra, though the true target was Antony. At the Temple of Bellona, customary war rites were performed, with Octavian acting as the priest. The Battle of Actium, a decisive engagement in 31 BC on the Ionian Sea, favored Octavian's naval strategy. Despite Antony's numerical advantage on land, Octavian's ships, led by General Agrippa, showcased superior maneuverability and more experienced crews. Octavian's forces had strategically seized Methone in Greece, causing logistical issues for Antony and Cleopatra, leading to defections and shortages. Antony, facing challenges in manpower and supplies, resorted to burning some ships before the battle. During the conflict, Octavian's fleet capitalized on its mobility, encircling portions of Antony and Cleopatra's fleet. Hindered by a lack of rowers and supplies, Antony and Cleopatra struggled to execute successful ramming attacks. Ancient accounts suggest that at one point, Cleopatra fled the battle, followed by Antony, resulting in the routing of their fleet on September 2nd, 31 BC. The pivotal battle sealed the destinies of Antony and Cleopatra. Octavian's dominance at sea allowed him to deploy troops in Egypt and advance toward Alexandria, the Egyptian capital. Despite Antony securing a minor victory on land, he and Cleopatra found themselves effectively trapped. Misinformed of Cleopatra's demise, Antony chose to end his own life, stabbing himself. Although he didn't immediately succumb, he was discovered wounded and brought to Cleopatra, where he eventually passed away alongside her, in the mausoleum as she received Antony. Cleopatra expressed her grief by tearing her clothes and covering her face with his blood. Despite her own hardships, she mourned Antony, addressing him as her husband and master. Upon Octavian's entry into the city, Cleopatra attempted to negotiate with him. However, realizing she would be taken to Rome and displayed as a war trophy, an unbearable fate, she opted for suicide. After 2 unsuccessful attempts, Cleopatra adorned herself in regal attire, reclining beside Antony in a coffin filled with aromatic perfumes. Subsequently, she introduced snakes to her veins, embracing death as if slipping into a peaceful slumber.